here in New York as a technical director. I help, essentially what that means is that I work with all sorts of artists to help create live performances. And as Nathaniel and I were talking about, I also teach at an arts program here in New York, which is very much focused on developing and subverting some of the emerging technologies with sort of creative use cases. And so a lot of the technologies that have become incredibly impactful in the last few years, such as machine learning and certainly blockchain, but AR, VR, and other media technologies. So a lot of them have traditionally been developed for, let's say, less than creative use cases. And there's a long-standing tradition of artists sort of subverting those use cases through artistic interventions. So I was reading just about one this morning about pose detection and motion tracking, which the entire history of pose detection is related to the military, and the military trying to find more efficient ways for soldiers to move and be equipped and so on and so forth. Going back to, I think, 1888, where one of the earliest photographic means of capturing motion and pose was developed by a photographer working for, I believe, the French military, but someone can check me on that. And artists have then come in and sort of taken these technologies from whichever use cases they were being developed for and sort of reevaluated them and found creative ways to make them their own and make them a valuable part of their creative toolkit, of their craft. And so I'm really excited about some of the emerging technologies that we're seeing today in terms of 3D, in terms of 3D authoring environments, in terms of web technologies, in terms of clearly real-time technologies. We're here on a call today, in large part because of WebRTC, because of the fact that WebRTC makes real-time communications possible and doable for, both for Discord, some huge corporation, but also for us as artists to develop with. So I guess to jump to Arium, I began work on a project that then became Arium very early on in the pandemic, about week 2 or 3 of March 2020, when I realized that these types of engagements that I was used to participating in, artistic engagements, so exhibitions and performances and live concerts, were all not able to happen in the ways that I was used to having them happen. So looking for new ways to make them happen that was a little bit better and a little bit more engaging and fun and creative than, well, certainly than Zoom and even than Discord and Google Meet and all of the other dozens of sort of video chat platforms. As I began to work more on the web and with Web 3D technologies, realized that there's a massive, at the time, sort of unexplored terrain for building out tools to better author 3D web experiences without having to have like a deep knowledge of code, because code is a great part of a toolkit if you have it, but is a real barrier to entry for a lot of people in arts fields and in other fields as well. So I'll pause there and I'll say that over the last now 2.5 years of developing Arium, I've been very, very, very lucky to work with a really fantastic cohort of artists and curators and increasingly sort of museums and institutions that are all as a group, excited about finding ways to build better arts experiences online and to share their work with, and increasingly, as I'm sure you've experienced as part of this VCA residency, a very global cohort of fellow creators and of your audience, whomever your audience may be, if they're technologists or artists, or if they're from the traditional fine art world, or if they're more from the performance space, or wherever they may be, or gaming, or whoever your audience is, most likely they're going to have some access to internet. And I think what I've seen is that giving people the tools to make the experience their own has just opened up a lot of possibilities, and I'm very impressed with what people have been able to make. So I'll stop there, and I'll turn my camera off and just say, before we begin, if anyone wants to share a little bit about if there's anything you're sort of particularly excited to think about, to learn about in the world of 3D web art experiences, then please feel free to throw it in the chat. I would love to kind of have that as a context before we really dive into things. I've spoken with Borya this morning, who mentioned a lot of you have 3D experience or have worked in VR or MR. That's really exciting. But if there's anything else you'd like to share, you can feel free to unmute and shout it out or throw it in the chat.
Hello, Aidan.
Hello.
Hi, this is Touch Sound Art. I'm a sculptor, and I believe I already received from you the access to Arium, so I had some time to play around with it. I'm curious if you can talk about maybe some experimental features and maybe some plans on the things that Arium is building for the experimental features that maybe are a little bit different from the other metaverse 3D worlds.
Yes. Are there any particular experimental features you'd like to bring up, or just sort of any?
Well, I noticed that you guys actually are one of the few platforms that do video mapping on the models as texture mapping. So those kind of things that are maybe not really associated with, building up a gallery that looks like an actual architectural gallery, but trying to think maybe on ways to interact with objects in a little bit different ways, or maybe trigger animations or spatialized sound and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely touch on that. And just before, any other questions before, or comments or thoughts before we begin? Thank you, Reverse Butcher. So you've been working in VR chat. That's great to hear. I've just heard about a few interesting, an artist with the theater I work with, working in VR chat for live performances. I know a lot of experiences have been built there. I haven't worked there myself, but it seems like a great platform. VR opera, that's fantastic to hear. Yeah, so Franco, thinking about physical site-specific installations and how to bridge the gap between the physical and the virtual. This is something I can definitely touch on. I had the opportunity to work with the Tel Aviv Museum of Art earlier this year when they held their first foray into thinking about Web3 and the NFT art world and phenomenon, and they held an exhibition about this space, and as part of it had a Arium space. So we had some learnings from that, and can definitely talk further. Okay, so I'm going to jump right into it. If you do have questions you want to throw in the chat, please feel free to go ahead. I think what I will do to start off is I'm going to just share screen and walk through a couple different spaces that I myself or other people have made recently. Whoops, wrong button. So this was a space made as part of the Museum of Contemporary Digital Art, MOCTA, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. They had a residency with a couple artists who go under the moniker Entangled Others. And this space is using many of the features that you mentioned, touch sound art. So that's sort of the reason I wanted to start here, including video mapping on surfaces. These artists were really excited about caustics, which are these beautiful patterns of light that happen oftentimes near water sources or underwater. And their work itself, I believe I'm not sure their exact process, but I believe they use AI as part of their work. But they've created this space that is really evocative in terms of the way it uses a very minimal palette to bring forth really a good sense of how their work fits into a larger conversation that they're trying to have about the environment and climate change. And I'll actually just drop the link in the chat in case you're interested. Let me just get to questions in the chat. So video mapping on surfaces, do you just make the video a texture and apply that, or is it more complicated? Can you use more than one video texture in a space, or only one? So to answer that, video mapping on surfaces, I can actually just quickly show you that. So if I go into one of my test spaces, so this is an empty test space. What I can do is I can create a new 3D object. Actually, what I'm going to do is create a new video. I believe I have some videos here. That will suffice. Let's see what I have. Yes, so I have some sort of screen recording here, and I can go to my video settings and set the play geometry to be a 3D geometry, in which case I can set any of a number of 3D surfaces to have that video mapped onto it. And this will use something that in the world of 3D graphics is known as UV mapping or UV unwrapping, to actually take that and make it available. So what kind of file size limitations? So in general, working on the web, you want to be particularly cautious about large files, just because it's going to slow everyone's experience down. So there's no hard limits within Arium, but you will notice that things tend to slow down after you have, let's say, a video of more than ideally like 30 or 40 megabytes. But if your whole space, you have to think about the space as a whole in terms of the numbers of videos and textures and objects, and so it's hard to give a clear rule. If you can have your whole space under 100 megabytes, that's ideal. Okay, so let me hop into a couple more spaces that are sort of just a demonstration. This one is a space created for and with the Tel Aviv Museum of Art. And this is a space again for they held an exhibition about crypto art in the last year. And this was a space that mirrored in a large sense, mirrored their physical location. So they had a physical location. That location has an environment very much like this, and they chose to extend that environment into the digital realm with this by just extending the architecture. So they worked with an architect to basically, as if they were planning a new building, extend their building to have a whole new section. Whoops. And then that section became the site of their exhibition. Along with that, in their physical space, they had a large format screen, something like 6 meters by 2 meters, which showed video from this extended 3D environment. And this became the way that they connected the two worlds. I'm going to hop into maybe one other space for now. So the questions about file types, yes, we support. And I'm just going to mute sound for now. So this is a space that has a number of other spaces linked off of it. And I'll show this space called Pupila Dilatada. It's a group of Brazilian artists put together this series. Really, I know my computer is jumpy. I'm running on an older computer at this point, and it's not operating too smoothly with Discord and everything. But they created this space that has 5 spaces linked off of it, and each of these spaces has the work of about 5 to 10 artists. And I'll just jump into one of these environments. This is sort of an underwater world that they've created, and highlighting, I'm not sure whose work this is, but it's real nice. This work here, and each work during the actual event, each work or each space linked out to eventually bring you to this final space, which had like a DJ set and live streaming and all of that. Let me hop back into the chat just to check if anything. Yeah, Pupila Dilatada. It's interesting. They're running a second cohort of this exhibition with another group that's all Brazilian artists, as far as I'm aware. But they're a really cool group of creators and obviously they have some serious 3D chops to make all of these environments and bring everyone together. I will mention, in case it's not obvious, Arium does support a lot of live features, such as live streams using RTMP live streaming, which is what you might use on YouTube Live or anything like that, which allows for a very high quality at live stream for any sort of like music or visual content that you want to be really like be in the best possible quality. Live streaming does have a lag, whereas real-time communications like we're talking now has no lag or next to none. So there's benefits and drawbacks to all sorts of technology choices, as always. This space is really wild. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but one of the things that's so exciting for me about working with Arium is that I couldn't have possibly thought of all of the different 3D techniques they've used and all of the different sort of aesthetic techniques they've explored within this space. But just by sort of putting Arium out there, we've made it possible that people have been able to start to kind of make these types of 3D works more public and more accessible. Okay, so I'm going to stop doing this sort of tour for the moment, and I just want to show quickly making a space. So if I go to the Arium website and I'm logged in, but I can go to my spaces, and let me make sure you're seeing the right page. Reverse Butcher, to answer your question, we've had up to 100 in a single space, and if you need to have more than, I think it's 25 is the standard limit, then you'd have to let us know, and we can kind of up the capacity, because we have to up our servers when we have events for 100, 200 people. But we've had up to 100 per space, and it's that's about the limit before people's computers start to get way too hot. And Hidden Forces, does Arium support Untitled XYZ's rooms? Yeah, so Kirk, our Untitled XYZ, has worked a bunch with Arium, and I know he's brought the Mocha Rooms project into Arium. I'm not sure the actual links, or I would just share one today, but I can look for that. And Victor, can a space be created with code? Great question. So sort of the code underlying, and Reverse Butcher, yes, we support GLB models. We don't currently support any other 3D model types like OBJ or GLTF, because GLB is really the kind of ideal model for the web, but we'd like to support more diverse set of models in the future. So Victor, that's a great question. Can a space be created with code? So I guess to give a sense of what Arium is composed of, Arium is built on a platform called Three.js, which is in turn built on top of a platform called WebGL, which is the web's framework for building 3D and even 2D technology. So it allows the web to connect, or browser to connect with your GPU. Three.js has a wrapper library called React 3 Fiber, which we use, which allows you to make composable elements with Three.js code. And if you're interested in building with code, I definitely recommend using React 3 Fiber. It's if you're into React, or just Three.js if you're into Three.js. I think we'd like to support doing certain projects with code in Arium, but I'm not exactly sure how to do that yet, how to support that and make it, like put it out there and make it safe and all that stuff. So for now, and really the purpose of Arium is to make it easier to work without code. So for now, with Arium, there's no coding involved. Are we planning to have XR with Arium? We have supported VR headsets in the past. We don't currently support VR headsets because they're not. There's just a few sort of movement things that we have to work out, but it is something we're interested in. Okay, I'm gonna hop into creating a space. So let me go ahead and create a new space. And when you create a new space in Arium, if you haven't done this yet, you have the option of choosing from a number of templates. These are just environments that I've made or some of my collaborators have made. And you can definitely start with one of these environments. If you want to make maybe more of like a gallery style space, you can. There's a few environments for that. And this Festival Dome is an environment that's more like a performance venue with an outdoor space as well. But for this purpose of this workshop, let me see this warehouse space as a number of different elements shown off within it. I'm going to go ahead and make an empty space. An empty space is just a good space from scratch to start with. And click create a space. And it has given me a space with a random URL. I can go ahead and call that VCA workshop space and save. And I can actually share this URL with you all right now. In case you want to, whoops, I shared it twice. In case you want to hop in and follow along there. So I'm in this environment. It starts out with this grid on the floor. Yes, you can get rid of the grid. You can go to the advanced editor. So currently we're in this the standard view of the space. If I click edit this space, this toolbar shows up and gives me a bunch of options for adding content to the space, for looking at the existing content within the space, for undoing and redoing edits, and for switching between first person and orbit controls. Orbit controls allow me to move a lot faster around the space and see it from sort of a bird's eye view. And finally, I can change things like the skybox or add and remove different post-processing effects, which can be helpful for giving your space a certain kind of tone or feel. So for instance here, let me turn on a vignette just to show you what it's doing. It's creating this sort of shape around my view, but I can make that more subtle. And this can be a good way to allow for the entire experience of being in your space to be as kind of closely linked to your work and to the work that you'd like to put out there as possible. So finally, the last view is you can go to the advanced editor, in which you can do things like set the metadata image. This is the image that shows up when I actually share a space in a social app. So I can take take a new image here. You can change various aspects of the theme, which I'm not going to get into this second. Change things about the environment, including turning on and off this grid floor, ambient light color, where people are spawning into the space, etc., etc. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into all of these settings just because there's a lot to go through. But I just want to show some of the really basic ways of working with these with this tool. So to start off, I'm going to add in a video. Once I've added a video, it's created a video. There's this little kind of blue box around it. That is where or when the video is playing. The video will play by default when I'm looking at that box. So if I look away from the video, it will stop playing. If you want to change that and have a video play all the time, you can change this setting when the video should play. And now it will play all the time. And there's all sorts of other settings within here as far as changing the thumbnail of the video and changing the play geometry. I can change it from it playing the screen to a 3D geometry and so on and so forth. But for now, what I'll do is I'll just add my actual video content. So I'll go ahead and go to my computer and look for an MP4 file, see what I have available. And it will upload and display within the space. This video, I'm not sure how well it's coming through because it's a very white video. It's a video of snow. But it's currently by default being displayed on a plane. If you choose, you can switch to show it on, for instance, a curved surface. And you can change the angle of that curve, or a 3D geometry, in which case you may need to actually generate that geometry in a 3D authoring environment like Blender or Maya, and actually set the UV map of that geometry. Okay, so that's adding a video. And next I'll show adding a sound. So when I add a sound, I have this sort of visualization, which looks kind of like a black box, but is meant to be a speaker. And if I add a sound file from my computer, let's see what sound files I have close by. I have all WAV files because I was recently doing a test with WAV files. Let's see what else I have. Okay, I have some sort of file here. I'm not sure what it is. But if I unmute, I'm not sure if you're hearing that, but it's quite loud for me. I'm going to mute this page now. And my audio has now sort of disappeared in that I can't see where it's coming from anymore. But if I go to my elements list, I can see that there's an audio file here. And if I choose to, I can change the positional audio settings, which is where is it playing within the space? Is it global or positional? And visually, how can I, if I want a sound just to appear in one small area, I can do that. I'm going to go back to look at the chat quickly. Victor, you hear it? Great. Photogrammetry. So yeah, that's a good question about photogrammetry. So a few people who are really into photogrammetry have been creating photogrammetry models within Arium, or rather creating them in their existing authoring environment and bringing them into Arium. And that's something I'm really into photogrammetry. I did a project a few years ago using photogrammetry, and I found it very exciting. And the tools have gotten a lot better. I know you can do even with a phone these days on the iPhone, you can do using its built-in LiDAR, you can do like a LiDAR scan with texture mapping. So if you are into creating 3D models using whichever authoring environment, photogrammetry or Blender or some other CAD, Rhino, there's probably a way to bring it into Arium, recognizing the limitations of the web and trying to keep things as small as possible. Thanks, Franco, for sharing this photogrammetry tool. So I'll show, if you're holding, let me show terrain first. So terrain is sort of a special 3D model in that it's generated on the fly within Arium. So I can create my terrain, and I now have this sort of default terrain built in, which I can scale up. So I'm going to scale it up to be quite a bit larger. But in the terrain settings, there's also a width and a height. So I don't need to set it through scale. I can set it using this width and height. In fact, I probably should set it using the width and height. I shouldn't have scaled it. And then I can also set the max height, which is currently 4, but if I make it like 12, it will appear somewhat different. And now there's also this setting is ground. So if is ground is set on, then the terrain will interact with Arium's physics system and will become the ground plane for your interactions. So what terrain is, and the reason why it has this funky grayscale image here, is that it will generate on the fly a 3D terrain from what's known as a height map. A height map is a grayscale image where the color value of each pixel in that image corresponds to a height. And there's tools online where you can find height map generator. You can find height maps of really any place on Earth. So let me choose some place that's sort of interesting in terms of the height. Sort of like Baja California in Mexico. This looks pretty interesting. And there's, I could actually just go ahead and zoom in here. This looks like a valley of some sort. I'm just going to go ahead and choose something that's roughly square. Don't need to be too precise. I think I got 901 by 901. Perfect. And then I'm going to drag that image as my new height map into Arium. And if I zoom out using orbit controls, we can see that this plane will resemble the features in that height map. And what will make this easier to see is if we add a light casting shadow over this terrain, which I can do by adding adding a light. By default, a light is going to be a spotlight, but a directional light is closer to the sun. And I can take that and rotate it until I have maybe some nice shadows that are kind of the effect that I'm looking for. So now I have this terrain that I can walk around. That's in fact based on a real world terrain in some ways. Although the scale is going to be off and many things are not going to be quote unquote realistic about it. Okay, so I'll just show one or two other things and then I will pause for today. And I want to actually ask Borya to share some of her experience with building within Arium. So I will show, so we've shown video, image is similar to video. There's also this NFT feature which allows you to pull NFTs directly from the blockchain. Within here, you can choose if they're Ethereum, Tezos, or manual entry. Manual entry allows you to basically just add in your content directly, which you can do not using the NFT tool as well. I'm not going to go through this. I'll just point out that if you are adding NFTs, each platform seems to store NFTs in different ways. And so Arium is not up to date on pulling from every single platform. So you may run into some issues, which if you do, you're welcome to DM me, and I can look into trying to resolve them. But sometimes it's easier and more direct to just add the image file yourself. Let me check so Franco, yes, Arium is, the terrain is adding the same square texture, and that can be edited. What that texture is can be edited within the terrain tools. If I go to material, I can change this texture file to be anything. So I could even make it this screenshot, and I can change the mapping as well. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. Victor, let me just unshare. Victor asks, what about pricing? So that's a good question. So the way Arium has supported itself, the way we've supported ourselves building this platform is by operating as a studio, as a sort of a design and 3D consultancy studio, which means that we've been building this as sort of a product, but working more closely with certain institutions, mainly, and sometimes individual curators, to build out spaces. So, for instance, I've worked with a number of museums this summer to help them think about how best to bring certain exhibitions online, and to, in which case I charge them based on that. So as far as for individual artists, we are offering a program to basically have it be free. And in the future, if Arium scales to the point where that becomes unsustainable, we'll look into updating pricing. But for now, Arium is free for individual artists, and we're working more more closely with certain museums to support ourselves. And I see Reverse Butcher had a question about colliders. And so do you need to set colliders for every 3D asset? So for those of you who have not worked with 3D assets, colliders represent areas that you can't walk into in a first-person environment. And you can either set different assets to be colliders within the editor, or you can upload separate collider objects, which are more low poly generally. I will just point out that there is a documentation within Arium with this link I just shared, and there's a few sort of more advanced techniques within this documentation that I would encourage you to go through if you, for instance, if you want to spend time going from Blender to Arium or other things related to that. Victor, you're welcome. And I'll just say about pricing, this is sort of something I'm actively thinking about because obviously I put a lot of time into Arium and need to be able to sort of support that time, while at the same time I'm not particularly interested in running a large company and would like to kind of maintain the way that we've run it, which has been very much directly engaging with artists and people in the arts, curators and museum directors, etc. So this is an evolving conversation around pricing and structure of the company, and I'm glad to have that conversation openly. Funding models within the arts, as many of you I'm sure are aware, are very tricky and not always super sustainable. Okay, so is it possible to export or import the full space? So yes, but not quite is the short answer. So I've been working on creating an exporter for an Arium space. If for people who have put a lot of time and effort into a space and then want to use them in another platform or want to show them on Blender or something along those lines. And it's currently available on a branch, which I can definitely share. But there are certain features within Arium that are not available within a GLB file, which is how we export, such as video textures or videos in general and interactivity. And so that is not available to be directly exported. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Borya, who has very graciously offered to share some of her experiences building spaces, and let's go from there.
Awesome. This thing that you're creating right now, Aidan, with the exporter of the space, that sounds pretty much like a dream come true. I really like the idea of that. And when you're ready to release that, I'm like the first person who is going to use that. Remember how we were speaking about that in the beginning, that some things that we can create in Arium are actually just created in Arium. Most of my spaces actually completely exist because of the functionality and editor of Arium, and there's nowhere where I can have them. So let's see, I'm going to show you. First, I'm going to show you this. Just give me a moment. As I mentioned yesterday, every time that you want to share something on your screen, it gets like a fever or something. Okay. Can you guys see this?
Yes, I'm seeing it now.
Yeah,
Awesome.
me too.
So there's going to be a little bit of music. Where am I? Hey me, where am I? Yeah, so let me try something else. Oh, there I am. So the first thing I'm going to show you is that the music is actually a video that I've placed over here. Just let me lower that so that it's not very audible. So basically, this is the space that I created just so that I can have meetings with people instead of using, instead of using the regular tools that we would have. I just created this so that we can have our talks here. And I love everything space related, so of course it's going to be here. Let me actually share that with you guys. Oh. Okay. So I just decided to check out some things and to see how things would work in here. Basically, I know it's very, very simple, but I just wanted to check everything out. So I created this landscape, which is actually, if you look at it, the landscape is, it's not showing over here. Weird. Um, It's okay, I'm not going to show you like this, but this is a very simple gray terrain with no UV mapping, no texture, nothing. It's just a shape that I created with one of the landscape add-ons in Blender. And then what I did, what I started with before to mention, was that you see the colors everywhere are not coming from the, obviously not coming from the planets, because the planets are just an image that I found that's wrapping around the space. This is something that you can do. But then I got a bunch of lights. Let me see if I can see them. Environment, lights. So this is what the space looks like from the top. I don't know if I'm breaking the magic over here, but I'm always against gatekeeping anything. So this is what it looks like from the side. And this, the water thing, is just an image. It's just a simple image that I put, and I aligned it so that it would be mixing with the water over here, or like creating this watery slide in the building. The building is very simple. I just decided to take a shape and move it around so that it can have a passing. And if you can see this, the lights are actually, so let me switch them off and on. So this is the purple light, and then there's this blue light, which should make you feel like it's reflected from this Saturn-like thing. And on, obviously, the yellow one. So the way I've made this work is this entire space is completely colored and has all the shadows of it just here because of the lights I've put in. So this actually doesn't exist anywhere else, you know? So exporter of this would mean that we could take this space, which has been edited and developed here mainly, to go on a different place. And so my idea for this initially was to create a gallery space for an exhibition that I'm planning, but I just felt so chill in it that I decided to put this song over here. So this is actually a video, and as you can see, if you go away from it, it lowers the volume. That's because I'm using the spatial volume. And let me see if I can show you. I think Aidan already showed you that before, but just to put an example to what's happening. So this video is going to play. If you see this white bubble that appeared, it's going to play if you're within this bubble. It's invisible. You can see it only when you're trying to fix it or to play with it. And then you also have the play geometry, which we discussed, and spatial sound settings that we also discussed before. This you can see this see it usually from the from up there, but sometimes it's not as easy to see, and you just gotta feel it. And there's also the volume percentages over here, so there's nothing to worry about. And my idea is to develop this into a beach. So if you go towards over here, there are some really nice places to relax, and I'm just going to place some chairs and some stuff. So the good thing about Arium that we are not able to show that much right now is that, say this is Joe's right now, and if I connect my camera and my microphone, we would be able to actually speak to each other over here. And that's the actual amazement of Arium and the metaverse in actually, but specifically Arium, because it just makes it so easy and reliable to be able to speak to friends over here. And also, I don't know if this is going to work, but maybe, yeah. So you can come and visit another space from my secret portal.
Hello. 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 Bonsoir, messieurs, dames. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
We've been expecting you.
Hey, old buddy.
How you doing?
Say, who are you anyway?
Let me present myself. My name is...
Thank you for coming.
I've got something I want to show you.
We're going to make this something they won't forget.
Let me show you.
Well, let's get busy.
A first in television history.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Okay, so I think it should be a little silenter now so we can hear each other. So this is the first space that I created, and it's such an experiment and vibe for me. I love it so much that I placed this eclectic method live stream here so that we can watch it, and there's amazing music. And sometimes I would play my space. I would log into my space just so that I can listen to the music and go about my day. This statue that I'm going to right now is what we were discussing before, if you remember. This is actually video which has this model projected on. So the video is projected on the model, and the model you can see over there, it's actually this black lady. So I decided to see what's going to happen if she's different. And there's a third one over here, but I'm going to show you this one first, because this actually is my latest drop. But you know, you can actually walk into it and you're at this amazing space. This is crazy and I love it. I don't know if anyone else likes this, but I'm so excited about this, especially if you come and meet friends over here and you know that you can log into it, you can like walk into the statue. That makes it so much more awesome. So the previous version of this space that I did actually had a bunch of secret portals going to places, and you would have to find all these flowers so that you can access the places. But I don't know if it's working. Oh, okay. Okay, hello. And then you come into this space, but it's just so fun for me to just check out a bunch of cool places and to create worlds for myself. The flower actually has to be opening for it to work, I found. This is my favorite place in the space, and it's very secret and cool. This video that's previewing right now actually is just a video, but I made its thickness, the thickness of the, how is it called? Okay, so this is actually the frame of the piece. And you can play around with these. You can change the frame, you can make it larger, and it's just such a fun thing to do, in my opinion, of course. And there's going to be some secret stuff over there. There are some some things in the spaceship that are not visible yet, and there's no way to go unless you have creator access to my space specifically. But I will soon show you. And so this is something that I've done just to make a bunch of experiments for myself, but I also hosted a party, a metaverse party once, and I guess two more times, but without specific DJs playing at the moment. And yeah, I can also show you our third cohort residency space, metaverse location. I'm thinking that my internet is a little slow right now, so sorry about that. So the reason why the space loads so slowly is because there is there are one or two 3D models that are very heavy that came in a little later, so we couldn't optimize them. And maybe Aidan can tell us a little more about optimization of the spaces and of files. So this is the actual third cohort exhibition space. The idea was something connected to desert, obviously, and Mars. And the space was mainly created so that the models for the space, the ground, and the specific models that are being placed, these frames that you see here, all of this was created by Michael Nelson from the second cohort, as well as Ana Lucia from the third cohort. And all of this was assisted by Ana Maria Caballero. And it was a lot of fun to be constructed, to be honest. And it takes a lot more time than you usually would think, these spaces. But they are very exciting. Like if you see on the back there, there used to be, this is what the stage was over there. And this piece over here is actually what is creating the lag in the space. It's just so huge of a model that it creates a lot of friction in the space in a way, if you can call it like this. And yeah, uh, this is some of what I wanted to show you. And let me think if I can show you something else now. So this space, first I'm going to show you the actual space that this place, this took care of. Just a moment. So this space is very weird. I forgot about the actual name of the space, but this is in LA. This is where VCA held the first digital roots in LA. And this is what the place looks like. while this over here. Is the virtual space that we created. No, I actually cannot. I can't hear you, Aidan. If anyone's speaking, I can't really hear you. That's very weird.
The microphone, or should Chrome?
Hi guys, I'm back.
Can you hear now?
Yes, right now I can hear. It seems
Yay!
that I wasn't able to hear you for a while. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I just I first of all, thank you. These are awesome spaces. Thank you for sharing all these. I just wanted to hop in and quickly mention a couple of the questions I see in the chat, or speak to them. So I guess the main one is from Jules, and a couple of you mentioned about, do you need to request permission for opening a space? What I've done is I've created a Google Doc for this residency cohort, and this has, I think, 18 or so invites. And the only thing I'm going to request is that when you take an invite, just put your name next to it, so that, hey, Mikal, so that it, because each invite can only be used once, so the next person, they don't try to use it. You can also just go ahead and maybe put a strike through that invite or delete it, so we know it's claimed. Now, what were the other questions about VR headsets? So we're working now on really making it the best possible desktop experience, and VR is very cool, and I've enjoyed developing for VR, but it's just not as many people have access to VR headsets, and so that's just hasn't really been our focus. I don't have like a clear timeline, because some of it is sort of waiting for part of the web development like frameworks that we're using to better support VR. They do support VR, but not 100% of the time. So it's a little bit of a wait and see right now. So if you're interested in specifically making for VR, I would say Arium's not the platform right now. Maybe check again in 6 months. And a few of you mentioned sort of live event statistics. That is definitely something that I've been doing a lot manually. People say, I just had an event last weekend. Can you tell me how many people showed up? And I'll check our analytics. But I would love for that to be more deeply integrated into the sort of creator panel as well. Yeah. I think I have about 5 more minutes, and trigger boxes for interaction. That's not possible, but that is something I'm looking into right now to see if it might be doable, or how it would be doable, and what the kind of UX for that would look like, because that would be really exciting. So I have about 5 more minutes. If anyone has thoughts or questions that they want to share, I'd love to hear them. And in the meantime, I'll just say, if you have to run, please, thank you for sticking around as long as you have. And thank you so much, Borya, and of course, VCA in general for having us. It's been great for the last few cohorts to be able to have this sort of inflow of creative energy to making spaces and thinking about ways to use these web art spaces in new ways. And Borya, specifically those techniques about having the space be gray, the terrain be gray, and color it with the lights is so exciting to see. So Ella B asks, is there a way to simulate wind and to have it interact with fabric elements? So yes and no. So not within Arium, but you can have animated 3D models, which you could generate in Blender and export as a morph target. So for instance, I'll quickly show a space that has these lovely animal animations. So these are animals that I've borrowed from Everything. Everything is the video game by an Irish artist whose name is escaping me right now, but has generously made all of his assets, or many of his assets, available for free. And among them are these lovely elephants, which I animated with morph targets and brought into Arium. Let's see if I can. So they have a slight animation to them, and within Arium, this animation just appears as an animation on a 3D model, which you can turn on or off. Can you embed PNG layers on Arium? Yes. You can create PNGs with transparency. You can also use animated PNGs. I recently added GIF support, and you can use GIFs with transparency. I will say that in general, there's a whole web 3D framework. WebGL does not have the best transparency support, and that's not an Arium thing, it's just like a WebGL thing. And so we're always fighting to make things work better, but there are issues you'll run in with if you have multiple layers of transparency. Yeah, GIFs are now available. I'll just quickly show, I think I have GIF support built in, but I'll just show how that works quickly. So if I'm in my space in Arium and I've just added a new image here, I can choose from PNGs, JPEGs, or GIFs. And if I add, let's see, Dorito transparent v3.gif, I have this image which looks kind of funky, but I can turn on animated, and I can further turn on transparent, and then it appears as this transparent rotating image within the space, which can actually, for 3D objects, can be a really nice. I mean, it appears 3D unless you're looking really, really closely to see that it's a GIF from the side. So you can do a lot with animated 3D GIFs or animated 2D GIFs, or even animated 2D PNG APNGs. Yeah, exactly. It can be kind of a, you can do a lot in terms of making things look 3D without requiring huge file sizes. And it's something that the pupilla dilatata folks kind of pushed me towards. and we did a lot of work for them. If I go back to the pupilla space, I'll show that all of these spinning portal animations are, I think, not GIFs. I think they used, whoops, I kind of fell here, but if I go up here, they used APMGs for this. Yes, I think working with 3D in general is about cheating. It's about finding ways to make the effect that you want for an audience without requiring people to have a super powerful gaming computer. So I think, there are sort of known techniques for cheating in 3D, like sprite sheets, like GIFs, but there's also ways to, make your own cheats. And that's something, obviously Borya showed us some great cheats, but there's lots of others that I'm certainly not thinking of, but I'm sure there's others out there. Can you tweak gravity? Yes, to an extent. It's currently an experimental feature, so if you just DM me, I can add it to an individual space. There may be strange side effects, but I'd encourage you to try it. You can also change the camera settings themselves, which means you can have like a very wide angle camera, for instance.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, the gravity is something very fun. And as I always say, whenever you're working in Arium, and not only in Arium, but all 3D programs, but I have my best experiences with Arium. And you just always want to try to see if it's going to break somewhere, just do as much as you wish so that you can break it. And from the breakage, amazing things happen. Like, actually, if you remember how I showed you, I imported a video file, which the frame of it was very large, so it kind of created a cube. You can actually get into that cube and you can actually put stuff on the walls in the cube. So it's absolutely not something that has been thought of specifically, but it is there, and it's a lot of fun. Like, there are sometimes that if you put a surface which is very sharp and you cannot walk on top of it, you can actually jump your way up on it. So that's probably the funnest part of Arium, is that it's entirely world building, and if something breaks, you can go back. It's completely okay. And it's not connected to, you know, staying forever trapped and not being able to completely reset your space if something goes horribly wrong. Like I can't even think of something like this. So I would very highly suggest you to start being very experimental with your Arium spaces. There was this Polish exhibition, Aidan, can you remember that?
Yeah, so that was fantastic. That was a group of Polish artists who put together this really interesting exhibition. Some of them had worked in 3D or VR, others had not. The exhibition kind of came out right at the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine. So I don't know if they ended up promoting it, but the space is still up. I would have to look for the link, and they did a lot of really interesting techniques.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me see if I have
I want to say two things before hopping off. The first is thank you so much for sticking around for an hour and 27 minutes. Really, it's incredible that you're giving yourselves, first of all, giving your attention, but also giving yourselves this time to be supporting your own work, whether Arium fits into that or not, just as part of a residency program. I know as an artist myself, I think there's a lot of times that work gets in the way. I'm gonna have to run off and do work now, and I think finding times to take care of your practice is really important. And secondly, just wanted to say that if you do have ongoing questions, feel free to DM me. I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to Discord. I'm a bit old-fashioned, so I can be slow. You can also email me at my Arium email, which I just put in the chat. And with that, I'll just say thank you so much, and I hope you can create awesome things. I know you will in Arium, but also in the rest of your work as an artist.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Aidan, for taking the time to share this amazing world building tool that you built along with Dan and continue the work on it. I'm so excited about the updates. It's so cool to go into a space and then see, oh my God, this didn't used to be here. What can it do? It's like Didi from Dexter's Laboratory trying to push buttons and to see what happens. So yeah, I would suggest doing more of that. And thank you so much for spending the time.
All right. Thanks so much, y'all. Okay.
Thanks
Talk
everyone
soon.
for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.